Welcome to Longterm. I'm Ty King, and in this podcast, we've discovered a lot of different aspects of recovery, whether it be from substance use to mental abuse to addictions of any sort and type. Learn there's a lot of things that we need to recover from. I think it's just as human beings, but also what sort of services are available to people whenever they need help, whenever they want help, and when they deserve help. Also, how are we going to approach the future so that we have a sustainable way of providing that help so that we can both prevent and intervene in those addictions when it's needed? And so, talking to experts like Dr. Zarner Jones, which is my guest today, I'm really excited to learn from you and your experience, your expertise, everything that you've, the boots on the ground. You've learned this first person. You've seen it up close and personal rather than just learning it through television. And so, Dr. Jones, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you, Ty.
Yeah, for sure. So I do want to start off by just talking a little bit about, right now your position in, recovery is that you founded the Nashville, Nashville Addiction Recovery, right?
Right.
That's the full name. Okay.
That's it.
It's an SEO ready name where it's like, all the words are there, but remembering which order they're in. So that when people search for that on Google, they can find it easily. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about what you do there at Nashville Recovery.
We have an outpatient behavioral health practice focused mainly on addiction medicine.
Well, something I hear more and more of is the dual diagnosis, and I think it's becoming more common and more accepted, from both practices and people who are going through addiction. Of like, look, there's a root cause of why you started doing doing the drugs in the first place.
Most people have a trigger.
Yeah, for sure. So Nashville, always like to ask because of location. It's where yes, the same substances are supplied across the country in every state. Doesn't matter if you're in Wyoming or if you're in California or if you're in New York. But it seems like every area has its like key issues that are going on at the time. And so for Nashville, which isn't too far from my home state here, what would you say the biggest issues when it comes to substance use there?
Tennessee is mostly plagued by opioid use disorder, amphetamine use disorder. The further east you go in Tennessee, the more likely you are to see methamphetamine use disorder. Further west you go, the more likely you are to see opioid use disorder. And in the middle part of the state, we tend to see both.
Your initial, I guess, that I know of that I can find in your initial entry into the every world is that you're an ER doc.
I am an ER doctor. Been an ER doctor for almost 15 years. Transitioned to addiction medicine about 6 years ago after seeing the transformational impact of sobriety in the life of my father. And I left a thriving emergency medicine practice in Texas to enter a fellowship in addiction medicine in the Department of Psychiatry at Vanderbilt, 2019 to 2020. It was a wonderful experience. And I originally wanted to do the fellowship to become proficient in detox, to learn the proper way to detox a patient. And that led to other services that they teach during the fellowship, such as medication management, cognitive behavioral therapy, and also crisis management, which we do on a regular basis here.
So you owned four separate emergency clinics in Texas, correct?
Yes, in Texas, just like Rhode Island and Colorado, it's legal for a sole proprietor to own a freestanding ER, and so I had ownership in 4 freestanding ERs down there, and during my time in the ER, in and around Memphis, in and around Houston, Texas, I saw so many patients who did not receive the services that they needed in addiction medicine, and so it wasn't simply a business opportunity, it was also something that was near and dear to my heart because of my dad, who I met when I was 28 years old. Found him in a shack in Rankin County, Mississippi, coldest day of the year, January 2006. He'd lost everything. He had no running water, no electricity. Was huddled next to a propane heater to stay warm. He looked like a vagrant under a bridge. My dad was dependent on alcohol, had 11 DUIs in 7 years. The chief of police in his hometown of 2,500 people, female chief of police, by the way, called my brother one day and said, "Your father's not doing well. He needs to be committed to the state hospital." My brother said, "Do it." My father was committed to the state hospital detox by a doctor who saved his life, and my dad never used alcohol again. We had a good relationship, as good as it could be. He was kind, loving, benevolent with what little he had, great storyteller, absolutely hilarious. He used to tell the same 3 jokes over and over. But my dad had a saying. He said, "Addiction will take everything you have and then it will kill you." And for people who have the disease, the genetic polymorphism, the A1 allele, it's called, it's on the short arm of chromosome 11. That's absolutely true. And people who with the disease of addiction don't have an off switch. If alcohol is their drug of choice, they have to drink the whole bottle, the whole case, the whole keg, the whole truckload, the whole bar. They just they don't. The meaning of moderation is so far. It's just the way it's in their. It's literally in their DNA. You can look it up. The A1 allele is been a lot of articles written on it, and it's not just hocus pocus. It's science. It's real. It's in your DNA.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's where a lot of my interest comes from in recovery, and I've learned that along the way is, my father was an alcoholic as well, living much like what you just spoke about, and he recently passed away this year, but he was living in a house that had no electricity, no water, and it's just
I'm sorry, Ty.
it's okay. I mean, it's something I'm dealing with and actively, and then trying to learn about what would have been available to him if he would have taken action and been able to do that. And it's very important to have, especially in those rural areas like where he lived, if more emergency services would have been available or more, options to go through some sort of recovery, would it have been more possible, at least to have it, nearby when a lot of people that are living in rural areas are having it's not realistic for them to have to drive, 20, 30 miles to get to an emergency service when they're having an actual emergency. So it's great to have more of those around the state. And I'm sure that was a case in Texas, because I know there's a lot of rural terrain there as well.
Yes, for sure. I mean, outside Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, uh, at El Paso, it's Texas is well, I guess Tyler in the Rio Grande Valley, but I mean, outside those cities, it's Texas is largely rural. So access to care is a real problem for most people across the country. If you're not in an urban area, it's made it a priority.
Yeah.
Access to quality addiction medicine care is a real issue.
So I'd love to learn more about, what advancements have you seen in all your years of being in this addiction field? Have you seen in the technology or the medicine itself that's being offered to people?
That's a good question. I'll take it in uh, 2 steps. There's been a policy change that's been a good change and a significant change, and that is a policy shift that eliminated the Data 2000 waiver, also known as the X waiver. That was a provision of the Drug Addiction Treatment Act of 2000. That law permitted qualified physicians, nurse practitioners, and physicians assistants to prescribe buprenorphine to opioid use disorder patients in an outpatient setting. The X waiver requirement was eliminated in December 2022, mainly because the government wanted to increase access to care And so because so few people had the Data 2000 waiver, they could not write for buprenorphine, which is specifically for opioid use disorder patients. So that's been a good policy change, um, and it's profoundly impacted people's access to care across the country. Historically, addiction has been viewed as through a punitive lens. It's been viewed as a moral failing, and that led to policies like the war on drugs that emphasized incarceration over treatment. Uh, and that approach resulted in a ballooning of prison populations and disproportionately affected marginalized communities. But we have a growing understanding in addiction medicine of addiction as a disease of the brain, as a legitimate disease rather than a moral failing. And that has driven a paradigm shift toward the public health approach that we now see, which is uh, a tendency to support drug courts, diversion programs, and also in prison treatment where who have the disease of addiction are treated in correctional facilities. Um, yeah, so those policy changes, starting with the Data 2000, have been very important in increasing the access to care. Another policy shift that was important is the Affordable Care Act. And that expanded access to addiction treatment by expanding Medicaid eligibility, requiring the coverage of essential health benefits and enhanced parity, meaning strengthening the requirement that insurers, health insurance companies, cover substance use disorder treatment no more restrictively than medical or surgical services. So technology has impacted nearly every specialty in medicine, if not all. And the main the main technological advancement I think so far is that people have they have an immediate access to a doctor when they're engaged with the program uh, through the cell phone. I mean, FaceTime. There are any number of virtual reality um, apps, and artificial intelligence is rapidly changing addiction treatment. There are mobile apps that help people manage triggers and connect with a support system. There are online AA meetings that are millions of people use. And my dad led an AA meeting and attended another one for 10 years. And those are so important to social support is as important as any other protective factor against relapse. It's important. It's as important as medication compliance with therapy.
Yeah, I know it here whenever you go to a behavioral health conference or, a recovery conference, there's always somebody there on hand to sort of give you a training, like a 5 minute, to 10-minute training on how to use Narcan on someone. And then being able to distribute that once you have the training, and then people will keep it in their glove box in case they ever see anybody it has had an overdose. Um, it's so that's pretty common in this area. So yeah, it seems like there has been, there's progression there, right? And so there are advancements in not only the medicines we're able to supply, but also the policies that allow us to do that, legally to carry those in our cars so that we can save a life if we see somebody struggling on the side.
Yeah, we have people who come into our program from all over the country, men and women. Many of them who have been discharged from inpatient units and relapsed. Some of them have been to the finest programs in the country, which shall remain nameless. Nothing against them, but the inpatient approach just doesn't work for most people. 94% of people relapse within 1 year after leaving an inpatient unit. And people so they come into our program, they ask us all the time, every day, nearly every day. People come in, they say, "How are you different?" We get that. It's probably the question we get more than any other. And so our national addiction recovery is different in three ways. Number one, we're outpatient. We don't even have an inpatient unit. We house people in hotel suites, Airbnbs. Uh, so we don't even have an inpatient unit. And then second, we approach addiction as a disease rather than a moral failing. And third, We teach people to wear sobriety as a badge of honor, to be dogmatic about it. We don't teach avoidance of triggers because that's not the real world. First thing they do in an inpatient unit is take away your cell phone. We don't do that. We do you no favors if we detox you and put you in a relapse prevention program for 30, 60, or 90 days and then hand you back your cell phone and now learn, good luck. Learn how to manage it. That just doesn't work. It's not the real world. We live in the real world with real people who have real problems. And so the approach of what I mean by wearing it like a badge of honor is just to be dogmatic about it, be matter of fact about sobriety. There's a tendency, I think, for people to cover it up in social settings, and a short declarative statement goes a long way. Not to make it sound any easier than it is. He'll never hear me say that it's easy, but it is simple.
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen lots of people that have the recover out loud, on their t-shirts or on their social media. And so that they are, directly addressing the stigma that comes with, being somebody in recovery. I'm interested in hearing, the success rate of outpatient versus inpatient. Why do you think that there's such a gap in the inpatient versus outpatient?
Because in an inpatient unit, most people do not learn to manage triggers. They're not in the real world. I mean, it's easy to remain sober when you don't have any triggers, but sitting on a beach beside an ocean and doing Tai Chi and yoga doesn't really prepare you for the real world. I mean, that's nice, a nice thing to do, but it doesn't equip the patient with tools necessary to maintain sobriety in a world where there are triggers all around. Alcohol and drugs are on every corner. They're in every restaurant, kitchen. I mean, it's just that's the world we live in. And uh, there's a reason that the drug cartels operate a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's because there's a very high demand for substances that they that they sell. And so our job is to show people, not tell people, but to show people how to manage triggers in the real world. And it starts with first thing in the morning when they wake up. That's it's a recommitment to sobriety on a daily basis.
Yeah, and that kind of, leads into how do they get support outside of your facility, right? So, what is a community-based approach to recovery while they're going through recovery?
Yeah, are we're big proponents of AA and NA. Uh, there are online AA and NA meetings, and then there are in-person meetings all over the millions of people in this country go to AA meetings on a daily basis. And there's something inherently beneficial about a support network of men and women who've been through similar struggles and who can identify and with what you say in a group meeting like that. Social support is pivotal. I would say it's as important as medication management. It's as important as therapy in its own way. If it is a form of therapy, it's a form of talk therapy. So we're big proponents of meetings, but also the use of apps that can at scheduled times check in with the patient and alert them. How are you doing? Do you have any triggers? Here's the next meeting scheduled online. Here's a meeting in your area at 6:30. It's 3 miles away. I mean, things like that. Anything we can do to nurture and undergird and to support a person in their attempt to maintain sobriety, we want to do.
And, something I've been learning along the way, of recovery, is, you always hear people that say, okay, you've got a problem, you've got an addiction problem, you got a drug problem, go get some help. And when they go to, a recovery or a rehab or something like that, and it turns out that they only accept people with, certain types of insurance or certain levels of insurance. And that's not something that I think that most people know of. They just assume, oh, it's a free service. You can go get rehab whenever you're ready. besides the big ones where they are doing yoga on the, beach or whatever.
It's, we were told that the ACA would fix all this and that all you gotta do is go on to healthcare.gov and register for a plan and all you'll be able to see a doctor for free, it's like what Trump said about healthcare.gov. Sounds good, doesn't work. So, we're a long way from where we need to be as a society. Prevention is better than cure, but it's just not, the reality in addiction medicine. I mean, all you gotta do is Google it. You can see the statistics. You gotta love artificial intelligence. I mean, any you they're just there's an abundance of articles, in peer-reviewed journals and also in major newspapers that have made very public the severity of addiction. And I think the stigma is slowly fading from our perspective here in Nashville. It is addiction is increasingly being considered as a legitimate disease rather than a moral failing. And that's the first step to real progress in addiction medicine.
So, a lot of the outside influences, and like you said, not avoiding triggers and living in a more realistic sort of environment while you're going through recovery. It's got to be a challenge to them, but it's also got to be a challenge to, I would say, your facilities in how you treat recovery, right? What are some other issues that you're facing in addiction or treatment?
The main thing that we engage in after detox is relapse prevention. And we have a program that is centered around cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a form of talk therapy pioneered by Aaron T. Beck at Yale. He died about 2.5 years ago at age 100. And he was the first person to explore and define the relationship between thoughts, feelings, and action or behavior. And therapy is really the backbone of treatment, not medication management. Medication is an adjunctive measure. Therapy is the real backbone of relapse prevention. And so we use, I'd say we have probably 15 to 20 PDF files that we go over with patients one on one. There are no group meetings here unless the person requests them. We start with a review of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was arranged in the shape of a pyramid here, although Maslow did not do that. Someone else did that for him after he presented his hierarchy of needs. And then we also, the second thing we like to use is it's from the Junto Institute. It's called an emotion and feeling wheel. First time I saw this, I said, "Oh, that's pretty." And it didn't really strike me. The import of it didn't strike me until I really started to begin to study the emotion and feeling wheel and how it applies to relapse prevention. Someone spent a lot of time on me. Look at that. Somebody spent a lot of time on that. And there are numerous things to take away, but the main application of the emotion and feeling wheel to addiction medicine and relapse prevention is that it is impossible to be anxious and grateful at the same time. This is discussed in the technique of mindfulness, which teaches people to take a moment, draw a comparison between what they're thinking or feeling at a given time, and then apply that to relapse prevention. And most of the time, what we're thinking or feeling in the heat of anxiety or depression is not congruent with what's actually going on around us. The sky is not falling. The sun will rise tomorrow. And so how this applies to the management of triggers is like this. When a person feels triggered, the goal is to shift the focus of their mind to something that is positive. And if we can succeed in doing that, they're no longer anxious. Again, not to say that it's easy, it's not, but it is simple. You cannot feel anxious and grateful at the same time. Try it. You can't do it because the part of the brain, the amygdala, which is the anxiety center of the brain, uh, adjacent to the locus coeruleus, which is where norepinephrine is produced, you cannot activate the amygdala at the same time that you activate the parietal lobe, which is where emotions such as thankfulness and gratefulness, peacefulness, tranquility are processed. You cannot activate those simultaneously. And so That's a very effective technique, the technique of mindfulness and relapse prevention. And we have another, have 2 excellent PDF files from the University of Michigan that we use, one from Hazelden that we've employed, and then we review the vicious cycle of addiction. So just like with the cognitive behavioral triangle, which focuses on the relationship between thoughts, feelings, and action and behavior, the vicious cycle of addiction focuses on that as well. Does that look familiar? There's an activating event which produces a negative thought, which leads to an uncomfortable feeling, need to escape, substance use, negative consequences of addiction, shame, guilt, regret. Then what happens if it's uninterrupted? Just continues on in perpetuity. And so there's another activating event that we focus on in our program, which leads to sobriety, and that is a little thing called honesty. And the 12 steps, which we do use with most patients here, although not all of them, because some people just don't want that. They're turned off by the focus on a higher power, and that's fine. You got to do what works for you. But if you look at the 12, what's step number one? We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. It's a simple, short, declarative, honest statement. Wear it like a badge of honor. And we tell people, this is what you're paying for. We're going to show you and not tell you how to do that. And that's really our secret sauce in Nashville addiction recovery. It's wearing it like a badge of, just like alcohol use, substance use. That's a lifestyle. Sobriety is a lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something you have to, I've learned, talking to people who have lived experience, they say that they get up every day and they actively have to decide what they're going to be that day rather than taking, I guess the privileged way that we most of us live, which is just we get up and we go about our day. We don't think twice
Yeah.
about it. It's just like whatever comes, comes. But then they have to actively make that decision. Well, being interested in learning how you see, addiction treatment is going to go, going forward. Right now, RFK Jr., who himself is somebody in recovery who is, over health and human services for the for the country. It seems like he's got some priorities in helping people in recovery, and obviously that's going to bring about some policy changes and some different ways that we're providing medicine. And so, I'd love to hear from your perspective of where do you think this is all going to go as far as addiction treatment.
Yep. There are several therapeutic modalities that show promise in addiction treatment. One is deep brain stimulation. Another is transcranial magnetic stimulation. These are neuromodulation techniques that are being explored to reset brain circuitry involved in addiction. TMS is already FDA approved for smoking cessation, and it's being studied for other substance use disorders. Brain stimulation directly modulates reward related brain circuits and shows promise in treating treatment resistant patients as well. And then you have the psychedelics, which we don't use here mainly because it's not legal in the state of Tennessee. But psychedelic assisted therapy is another promising therapeutic modality. Psilocybin and MDA facilitate cognitive and emotional shifts that aid in recovery. These therapies are usually administered in conjunction with psychotherapy. Psilocybin's mechanism of action involves its conversion to psilocin, which acts as a serotonin receptor agonist. It is very powerful. I've had several patients uh, who've tried it, having tried nearly every other treatment without benefit. It's particularly effective in people with PTSD. And then its activation is supported for the hallucinogenic effects of psilocybin and other serotonergic psychedelics. MDMA, that's methylene dioxymethamphetamine, otherwise known as ecstasy or Molly, exerts its effects by increasing the levels of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. I've also had a few patients who've used it in another state, but it's not as available as psilocybin, microdosing of psilocybin. And then you have your GLP-1 agonists such as semaglutide, which is a diabetes, the weight loss medication that's shown potential in reducing substance use and it's being researched for addiction treatment. Those are the most promising emerging therapeutic modalities that I see. Of course, you've got the AI and telemedicine and AI are going to become more available as well, or it's going to increase access to care for addiction medicine treatment for people. And then you've got there's some other things like music therapy, contingency management, interventions like multidimensional family therapy, uh, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, mindfulness-based interventions. I think are going to become more common and more accepted too. It's easy to feel alone when you go through something like addiction, and that's another thing we tell people is you're not alone. There's millions of people suffering right now. It may not initially make you feel better but when you go to a meeting and you're surrounded by people who are, front and center saying, "Hello, my name is," and I mean, there's just something inherently beneficial about that. It's as effective in our opinion, it's as effective as a relapse prevention tool as medication.
Dr. Jones, the last question for you, I always ask people at the end of the show. Um, Given all your expertise and your experience and what you've seen, you've seen people go through recovery successfully. I'm sure you've seen some other stories where people sort of relapsed or needed, to go through recovery more than once, right? So there's multiple entry points for that. What do you think is a long-term solution for people that need recovery going forward?
That's a great question, Ty. I think the most important thing that we can teach are the facts about addiction, the facts about alcohol, the facts about opiates, the facts about amphetamines, the facts about control medications. Alcohol is a poison, and we have been brainwashed into a delusional thought that it's perfectly fine. It's everywhere you go. It's in every restaurant. It's in every grocery store. It just nothing could be further from the truth. Alcohol is a poison, and the popular belief that it's okay is just a lie. Alcohol causes at least 7 types of cancer. Alcohol consumption increases the risk of cancers of the oral pharynx, the mouth, the oral cavity, the mouth, the esophagus, the liver, the larynx, colorectal cancer. It's implicated in colorectal cancer, female breast cancer. It is a carcinogen, plain and simple. Uh, there was a good article that came out. It was published by the World Health Organization. Actually, facts about alcohol and cancer. If you want to have a look at that, it's quite good. There's a PDF file that we show people. Uh, More than 1 in 10 of all cancer cases are causally linked to alcohol across the World Health Organization European region. This is from 2018, and that was due to drinking no more than one bottle of beer, 2 glasses of wine, or 60 milliliters of hard liquor. And that's just not that much if you think about alcohol consumption. We spend $249 billion a year in this country on that's the economic burden of alcohol and drugs and this or no, excuse me, of alcohol alone. Alcohol alone, $249 billion. So over the course of 4 years, we just spent $1 trillion on the economic burden. Think about that for just a second, Tom. That's lost wages. That's criminal activity. That's the health effects of alcohol use. The numbers are staggering, and we've been brainwashed. Why do you think Anheuser-Busch why do you think InBev spends $11 million on a Super Bowl ad? It's effective, it works. The return on investment is quite good, but we've been sold a lie. Alcohol is not okay just because it's legal. It must be okay. Alright. It's like Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets when a woman knocks on his door. Go sell crazy someplace else, we're all stocked up here.
Absolutely, and it's told to us, yeah, as an adults,
Yeah.
what do you do when you have a stressful day at the end? Just go have a drink.
I'm 21. I can drink now.
Right,
It's
right.
okay. It's okay for me now.
Yeah.
Poison, Ty.
It is. I mean, it actually is. It's actually was. Yeah, Dr. Jones, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your expertise and your knowledge and, talking about recovery and, helping us all learn a little bit better about what's actually being done, and what we can look forward to, where we can, where we definitely stand to improve services. If someone wanted to find out more about the Nashville, Addiction Recovery Your Center, where would they go for that?
The website is a good place to start, NashvilleAddictionRecovery.com, or they can call my direct number, 615-753-7966.
And thank you for listening. And if you are listening to this in the audio podcast platform, you can find us on YouTube. You also vice versa. If you're on YouTube, you can find us on any of the podcast platforms from Apple to iHearts to Amazon Music. They keep changing the names of a lot of the apps. And we're on every podcast platform that is out there. And if you heard Dr. Jones talk today and he said something that was impactful to you, or you thought, oh, I know exactly who needs to hear this, share this episode. That's the quickest way to grow the show, to grow the message, and to get the message to the people that need to hear it. Worst case scenario, they won't listen to it. Best case scenario, it could save their lives. And so make sure that we're sharing these. Dr. Jones shared a lot of really insightful things from his experience as a doctor and in treating addiction. And this is something we should be letting the more people in the community know about so that we can have that more that future where we can actually sustain this and have less people that are addicted, more people in recovery, and we can recover ourselves as a community and benefit from that. So, Dr. Jones, thank you again for being here and sharing. I really appreciate you taking your time out today, and we will see you in the next episode.